Miss Atkins?
Here.
Mr. Houston?
Here.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Here.
Mrs. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. Sorensen?
Here.
Mr. Wright?
Here.
Mrs. Sheppel?
Here. Can I get a motion to approve the November 18th, 2024 agenda?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Miss Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Sorensen?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Mrs. Sheppel?
Yes. Commendation and good news.
So I switched it up. I got a little bit of a colorful presentation now. So, and I did use Canva, which is new for me, stretching my abilities here. So, so just these recent good things. One, we passed the bond. So thank you to the Lewis Central community for your support. This will be huge. I met with project advocates today, and we kind of had a very initial conversation about, what are we going to do moving forward with the funds, what a timeline looks like, that kind of stuff. So all very exciting stuff. We will have a website. Our bond website will actually now shift to be more of a project website, so people can kind of follow our progress as we have meetings and we post, agendas and those types of things. That'll be online so people can kind of track the progress as we go. So. Outsiders, the high school just had their play, and from what I heard, the kids did a phenomenal job. The kids work hard to put on the show and to make it something that's pretty entertaining, and so kudos to the kids. We had our Veterans Day program last week. Sounds like it was very organized. The speaker did a wonderful job. I wasn't able to be there because I was out of town, but I've heard nothing but very positive things about it. Was anybody able to make it to the Veterans Day program? Emma was, yeah. So, okay. Swimming state finals were this last weekend. So we had, looks like we had 6 total swimmers that participated in it. In the 50 free, that's kind of our top place finisher, Rio Hammett. She got 6th place. She also got 12th place in the 100. She's just a freshman, so that's pretty awesome. And then we had a couple girls place in the 30s, and a couple. Lexi got 22nd place in the 22nd place in the 100 back, and then we had a couple relay teams do very well as well. So congratulations to the swimmers, and I think we're now moving on to boys swimming. So. 29 of our students, and this apparently is a record for us, made the SWEBA Honor Band. So that's phenomenal. So one of the things that's exciting about that is we always kind of play catch up because a lot of the other schools around us start band in 5th grade or even 4th grade. So we don't start band until 6th grade. So they said it's really hard for our kids to, to really get caught up in order to make it. So 29 of them made it. That's huge for our school. So. And then we made the football semifinals again. It was a good game. It was a tough game. It was literally, it's a game. They say football is a game of inches. That was literally the case. One more inch, and we would have taken the lead and gone up 17-14. And instead, we were 1 inch short. And a play later, we were down 21-10. So it's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. But fantastic season. Finished 10-2. Very proud of them. And just, the other thing is when you look across our depth, we're pretty good clear down to 6th and 5th grade. So it's going to be, we're going to be kind of a monster to deal with. And we have been. We made it to the semifinals, at least the semifinals, 6 out of the last 7 years. So, they're going to have to get us now if they want to try to get us. So it'll be fun to watch us continue to go. And then I think that's it. But now we're heading to the winter sports season, which means show choir's kicking up. Concert band, we just had our choir concert last week. I heard that was phenomenal. Again, I was out of town, but we have band in our holiday concert coming up. And then we have show choir and basketballs. Today was the first day of practice for both basketball and wrestling for the boys. Tomorrow night's our first scrimmage for the girls. So boys swimming will start up here. So it's just it's like nonstop. Go, go, go.
Anyone else? Commendation or good news?
We had, I believe, 29 thespian kids, which are
That's right.
theater kids who attended the Iowa Thespian Festival in Cedar Falls this last weekend. We did have a group that we had several kids who competed in whether it had been individual speech or small group ensemble type things, but I have not seen any postings. But 29, I think, is the largest group that we've had go for quite some time. So very nice representation of Lewis Central at the Thespian Festival this year.
Emily, so there's a couple groups that made it to the next round of whatever.
Yeah, and I haven't seen those details yet, so I will make sure to ask for those so that we can acknowledge those kids individually.
Okay, thank you. We'll go on then to comments and suggestions. This is the first time during our agenda that anyone in the audience or anyone online wants to type something in to address the board. Okay, hearing none, we'll go then to our consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Do we have an updated personnel sheet?
Doesn't look like anything's different.
Yeah, no changes.
Is there any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Sorensen?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Adkins?
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle?
Yes. Report 6.01, superintendent report.
So the report's basically just that, so a couple things. One is we just had our school performance profiles that came out. So they changed the metrics on us. So like last year, for instance, we were high performing in 2 of the 4 areas, commendable in 1 area and acceptable in 1 area. This year, when you look at it, if anybody's wondering like what happened, so they came out with a new metric that now heavily weights chronic absenteeism. And one of the things that we do a very good job of is charting every single absence. And so I think that's come back to bite us. So now all of a sudden we're dropped down to needs improvement in 3 out of the 4 and acceptable in 1. So it's a pretty significant drop. And when you look at it, our scores are the same, our growth is the same. And I'm not showing it up here right now, but it's a lot of it's the chronic absenteeism. There are some other things like ELL. But that's why we hired the new ELL teacher at the high school to try to bolster that, because we have more non-English speaking students than we ever had before. So we just need to make sure that we're focusing on that. And then again, our special ed growth is always a target, something that we need to be able to continue to focus on. So just so people know, if anybody saw those come out, a lot of it has to do with they're now charting chronic absenteeism. And one of the things we used to do, for instance, is if you, like, let's say you came up to a party at the end of the day for like Titan Hill, and then you brought your kid home with you, even though it's only like a half hour early, that would count as a half day absence. And so that would be recorded in the state as a half day absence versus 30 minutes out of 6.5 hours, So this year we did change that. So now it charged per minute. So if you take your child out of school, it's a per minute deal. And so that should help us pretty significantly. But they used, of course, last year's data when we're still almost overly identifying people. So it'll be interesting to see, now that we have some more accurate data, what that'll look like next year. But has nothing to do with our scores. We're still a very high achieving school. It just has to do with that was a priority of the governor and the Department of Ed, was chronic absenteeism, and that's why you'll see we just sent out a letter today or an email today to all parents talking about chronic absenteeism. Just so parents know, it's nothing that we really haven't been doing in the past, but now there's more requirements. So if you miss 10%, we now have to send you a letter. We have to send the county attorney a letter. Just know the county attorney's not going to do anything with the 10% letter. It's just what the state's making us do, to basically alert them that this is what's happening. At 15%, which is about 9 days per trimester, now we have to send you another letter, and we have to contact you and say, hey, can we get a plan put together? For the most part, that means that we're just going to touch base on a weekly basis and say, hey, everything's good, whatever. It doesn't mean that if you're sick, we want you coming to school. You know, there's excused and not excused, but for the purposes of chronic absenteeism, the state is tracking every absence. It doesn't matter. So even if you're deathly ill in the hospital, we still have to count it towards chronic absenteeism. Again, not our thing. It's what the state and federal guidelines are. And then when you hit 20%, that's when we have to send another letter to the county attorney. But again, the county attorney is not going to act until you have 20% of non-exempt absences. So there's exempt, non-exempt. It's very confusing, but we sent out a letter. Essentially what I want you to know is if you get a letter and you have a concern, call us. We'll talk you through it. We're not trying to bombard anybody or trying to do anything. We're not trying to keep you from going on like a once-in-a-lifetime family vacation or going and visiting grandma or we don't want you to come to school sick. It's just something that we have to do. So that's new. I already talked a little bit about next steps in regards to the bond. We did meet with project advocates today. We're kind of spelling out what the high priority projects are that we believe we should move forward with starting this next summer. Our next step will be to kind of present that to the facility committee in the beginning of December. So we'll be getting out dates for that. And then after that, then we'll kind of present that to the board. And then the board will say, yep, that looks good, or no, we have issues, or whatever that is. And it's just recommendations. And then that way, project advocates knows how to proceed. So we actually won't start bonding out the money because they want to see what the rates do now that there's a new president. And so they're recommending that they think they could continue to drop a little bit. So they're saying, hey, wait a couple months before you go and before you borrow that money, which is fine with us because we're not going to spend it right now anyway. If you do have to spend money right now, like for instance, we're going to have to close on the land, I'll present to you a resolution at the next meeting in which you guys will just pass a resolution that all it says is that we can spend the money now and we can reimburse ourselves with the bond money. So because the land's not going to wait until we get the bond passed not the bond passed, but the money borrowed in April or May. They want to sell the ground now, and so we're going to have to buy the ground and then reimburse ourselves a portion of that. So it's all very strategic and linear as far as how we have to do things. So we'll put together a plan and have that for you. Next board meeting, you guys will also get a sample of next year's calendar. There'll be a couple different changes. One will be semesters. Another one has to do with negotiation and time that teachers are on the contracts that we're working out right now. But I'll have some proposals to you on December 2nd. So if you're sitting there out in the community right now and wondering why there's no calendar for next year, it's because there's a lot of moving pieces yet, and I don't want to put out calendar after calendar and then you're trying to figure out which one's the most updated. So hopefully we'll have some pretty firm ideas by December 2nd. You guys will review it, and then we'll have a hearing and an approval on December 16th. So that's the updates.
Okay. Thank you. We'll go ahead then with our discussion items. 7.01 LCEA intent to negotiate.
So if you scroll down a little bit, there's a letter. There it is. So this is just a letter from Dave Bergman. Dave is the president of the LCEA. All it is just saying they intend to negotiate. So if you guys remember, and Bubba, this will be new for you, that essentially what happens is they have to say, hey, we really want to negotiate, and these are the terms we want to negotiate. So they're going to request to open up some language because the language is technically closed until the 27th. And then obviously base pay is something they want to look at as well. And then it kind of just spells out who's going to be a part of that team. And then on December 2nd, they will bring their initial proposal on, and then the board, HR committee, and you guys will decide that on December 2nd. We'll meet sometime shortly after that and talk about, what is the board looking to provide as an initial proposal, and then you will propose that on December 16th, and then negotiations are open. And then you can have more just generic conversations between the association and yourselves in order to try to figure out, where to land. A couple things that they will be looking to negotiate this year are salary schedule in general. Our salary schedule is very convoluted, and so they're looking to do something that's a little cleaner, a little easier to decipher. And then kind of mentioned a little bit some days and hour stuff, and then outside of that, there's not really anything else. Should be, pretty typical negotiations. So
Any questions?
And there won't be any action on this one. This one's just, you just receive the letter and that's it, so.
No. And usually we have to wait for insurance to come in and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah, we won't close until,
Right.
it's usually February by the time,
Right.
end of February, so.
Right.
But at least by opening it up and by having initials out there, then we can at least have the conversations, so.
Right. Okay, thank you. 7.02, SBRC applications, open enrollment out, not on prior year's head count.
Yeah, so I'll let Andrea kind of explain this one a little bit.
So with both of these, they are for modified supplemental amount. So these are not for the actual cash on both 7.2 and 3. So this first one is for open enrollment out that was not on the prior year's head count. So any student that we did not receive funding for last year on count that we have to pay for the open enrollment out this year, this is giving us the spending authority to do so. So this is calculated and based off of what we just submitted for the full count. So that amount is $510,113.72. And then for 7.03, this one is for limited English proficient instruction beyond 5 years. So you are given the original weighting for these students for the first 5 years, and then after that, you have to request the authority for those. So that we are requesting $47,190.78, and this amount has been about our average amount that I've seen over our last 5 years. So it's stayed pretty consistent for that. Or obviously, the one with the open enrollment is all based off of what is happening with our enrollment.
So in the open enrollment, what that is if, let's say a student moves into, so our funding's always a year in the rear, right? So if a student moves into our district and they open and roll out, or if they just open and roll out, but they weren't on last year, let's say they came during the summer, they move here in the summer and they open and roll out. Well, we would have received no money from them because they weren't on the previous year's head count, so they weren't on October 1st head count. So we have to request the authority to spend the money. It's not cash, we're just asking for authority, so then if we were to need the cash, we could tax base back and get the cash for that amount of money to be able to send to the school. So, but October 1st is always the deadline, so if a student comes after October 1st, we don't receive any money, but the school that receives a student still has the authority to bill us for that student. Even though we don't get any money, we still have to pay for that student. So.
Okay, is there any questions on 7.02, the open enrollment? Is there any questions on 7.03, the limited English proficient instruction beyond 5 years? So it's just spending authority on both?
Correct, on both of them.
Okay.
And there is a third one that we will sometimes ask for, but that is for the increase in enrollment. And obviously, we did not have that one this year. But, so there are 3 that you can request the SBRC, so we have 2 out of the 3.
Any questions on either, discussion on either one of those? All right, thank you. 7.04, 200 series policy review, updates and IASB alignments on the second reading.
So after I left the last meeting, I kind of touched base with board members and just kind of said, where do you sit and if I didn't know what your opinion was that evening. And so I sent you guys an email, and if you can pull up that policy right now. So, there you go, zoom in. So this was kind of oh, nope, it's the one that says -1. It's 203-1. It's right there. Yeah. So kind of the feedback that I just wrote this, and I won't say anything more other than this was the one that as I was kind of gathering from people, two main things. One, it sounded like people were pretty much in agreement that the spouse is not an issue, and so kind of put that in there, and that's if you scroll down, that's in the bottom right there. So it just says, it shall not be a conflict of interest for the board to hire a spouse of a board, have the spouse of a board member do business with the spouse of a board member during the term of the board member. The payment of compensation to any, you're going too far. There we go. To any other family member shall be within, to any family member should be within discretion of the board. So that's the main one there. Kind of just took that out, like it's just kind of up to the board, just like it is with any employee to hire. Okay, so that's the one that, and then if you scroll up, the other part that was kind of more of a conversation, which I just is how it's written right now. We can change it. You guys can table this particular policy. You guys can do whatever, but this is kind of what I had gathered. So I just put in rare and unusual circumstances when no other reasonable options or qualified applicants exist, it will not be a conflict of interest for board members to receive compensation from the school district for contracts for the purchase of goods and services which benefits a board member, or compensation for part-time or temporary employment as long as the benefit to the board member does not exceed $2,500 in a fiscal year. The district must first attempt to purchase goods or services from other entities and are advertised to fill open positions before awarding purchasing or employment contracts to board members. So essentially what I was hearing is like, there are circumstances, situations in which it might be reasonable if a board member is the only one available to be able to do a job for us to compensate them something. But, in those circumstances should be, if we have other qualified applicants, we should pursue that option first. If we have other avenues for purchasing stuff, we should pursue that first. But if I'm looking around and I need somebody to drive a bus and Bubba's the only one who can drive a bus, that might be, I'm picking you because you're not on the board yet. So, but that would be a situation where it's like, okay, in order for him then to fit underneath our liability insurance by driving a bus with students in it, we would have to compensate him something, so that's kind of just what I put out there as kind of an option. I kind of worked through it with Brett and just said, what would be some good terminology here. So that's kind of what we had put together. So I'll leave the conversation then up to you guys.
Any discussion?
I think that looks good, and it takes in a lot of our feedback from the other week's discussion. And just a clarifying point that the Iowa change was up to 20,000, or that maybe was always it, and we just always had 0.
Yes.
And we're choosing 2,500 for conservative.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Anyone else? I know last time we talked about board members being compensated, and I know some, volunteer and are in the buildings and everything, and it'd be nice to have a job or something like that. I think it's everyone's different. The basis of this board policy is to not bring conflict to the board table. And I don't believe it's old-fashioned just because over half of the state districts, they still have it in their policies. The one, every individual is different. I mean, if I sit here for myself, I have never turned in any receipts for going up to any conventions. I've never cashed a check from Lewis Central, but that's me. I feel I'm giving back, and so that's part of my volunteering. But one thing I wonder if we could do is not decide this tonight and possibly survey teachers and other staff. Would that be a possibility to see what their input would be? Because if I'm a board member and I'm coming in to substitute in a teacher's, in her room or his room, that maybe they don't want that.
Yeah, we could do that. We could put out a survey that basically says, would you have concerns if a board member was, employed by the district? Would you have concerns if a board member, as a last case scenario, was employed by the district? Would you have, we can create some sort of a survey. Yeah, I can do whatever you guys want me to do, so.
And I know not everyone's gonna reply, but that might be something, instead of us just deciding on this, it's also coming from the employees.
And I think maybe we might get a bit more of an honest opinion if there was a way for them to turn it in anonymously.
For sure.
Right, right. Because, it would even be, bus drivers. Do they really, is that gonna be an issue, having a board member there? And teachers with substitutes, because I wouldn't want to have anyone on the outside feel like this isn't something that we asked others about.
I wouldn't ever want to make anybody uncomfortable, ever. I guess I just would want it to be known that, oh my gosh, if there's no substitute available, I'm not going to be able to attend a funeral. I guess that's the kind of position that I would never want a teacher to be in. I personally, in the conversation and my reason for sharing what I did, was never to have any gainful full-time employment. It was more along the lines of, how could I help if somebody needed me to? Sorry, I can't. I want to be able to, in case of last possible option.
And there are situations in which, having if versus a volunteer, like for instance, like substitute would be one of those that after having conversations with Brett, like it's easy to say, you could volunteer as a substitute in the classroom, but you don't have quite the same coverage liability wise as if you're a paid employee at that time. So and just like bus driving, like originally I told Bubba that you can volunteer and drive a bus, and now Brett's telling me, no, you got to get paid something. So so that's where I think, and that's kind of where I kind of drafted this was, there may be some really rare and unusual circumstances. And like I said, I can sure, send a survey out, and I can kind of, I can even use this language too as kind of the end, like, if this language was there, would you have any problem with, with a board member coming in a unique circumstance or a rare circumstance and working in a position that they would have to be paid in order to be covered by liability, insurance, AKA substitute, driver, et cetera.
Would the concern be from them getting paid for it, or just a board member in general holding the class for the day?
I think
the worry?
I think where the worry is you have some people who don't even like me walking in their classroom.
Okay.
So, and not that I'm a bad guy and I never ever say anything negative, but there are some people out there that, when the authority figure walks in their classroom, that's not a comfort. They get worked up about that, so to think about having, a board member that all of a sudden they're going to be subbing in your classroom, that could be a pressure point for them, or let's say you happen to be working in the school and something happens and now all of a sudden it's, because you guys are technically the last line of rebuttal, we have their immediate administrators, so that's your kind of initial, I'm supposed to be the one that you can appeal to, and then you have the board. And so, and if you're working on a regular basis within the district, you might not be able to, honestly, you'd have to recuse yourself from a lot of those decisions. So it's kind of a mix there. So like I said, it's just kind of
And then
it's a fine line.
Right, and then that would be the concern if there's more than
Yep.
four, then we don't have a quorum.
Right. And I know originally the conversation revolved around like what happens if a board member doesn't get a position in which they applied for. I think this language takes that out because if there's other if there's other applicants that are suitable, like that just kind of eliminates that. Because it would be like as a hiring agent, like I'd be like, ooh, you know, like you guys are my boss, so I'd be like, sorry, I'm going to hire somebody else over you. Like that might be a little bit of, that's not me. But you might have other people that kind of think the same way. But on the flip side, let's say you do get hired over somebody else. Is that person then that community member who was otherwise a qualified candidate say, wait a minute, you hired that person because they were a board member, you know? So it just kind of creates conflict either way. So I think this language does eliminate that. I think it says, if there's no other suitable applicants and it's that, or you have to not go to a funeral, like, you know, that might be the situation. Or we don't have a pet bus, or we don't have, you know, whatever the scenario is, you know.
Do teachers get to pick who their sub is? I don't know how that
Sometimes,
works. Okay.
sometimes, but not all the time. What they do is they put in SubFinder, like if you wake up and you're sick, you put in SubFinder, and then that goes out to all the available subs, and it's the first one that takes it gets it.
Okay.
So, you know, so Amy's quick on her feet, she can get all sorts of, you know, of sub jobs, and those teachers really have no say over it, you know, so, but like, so the state football one was a good one. So state football, we had several people that wanted to go, and kind of how we do it when we have a situation like that is it's people affiliated with the program, like coaches, sponsors, et cetera, go first, and then we allow parents to be kind of the next line, and then if we're out of subs, we tell you if you can find coverage, then we'll approve your personal day, you know? So then that's where they're the ones reaching out and calling subs. And honestly, sometimes that, because otherwise you get a notification on your phone and you don't really want to sub because it's going to be nice out and you're like, nah. But then, you know, I call you up and be like, hey, will you please sub in my classroom? And you're like, fine, I'll come and sub. So those types of things do happen as well, so.
In some districts, you can request specifically the sub that you
Okay, that's what I thought, but.
Yeah, so any of ours that are pre-done, like teachers can build their favorites list too.
Yeah.
So like it would call Sally first and then whoever next and whatnot. But then usually by the morning ones, those are pretty well, they just kick out to all of them.
And if we can get a question in there about spouses too. since
Yep,
that was
yep,
on-
I can definitely do
on the
spouses as well,
policy.
yep.
We have 10 open sub jobs on Monday. I had to cancel PD on Monday because we can't get sub coverage.
We only have 7 board members, so that doesn't help you anyway.
I'm free on Monday.
You're gonna have to cancel it no matter what,
Sure.
so.
So are we good to approve all the other 200 series and pull this one out? And we'll bring it back with the survey results?
Okay, so someone just have to make that motion then when that time comes.
Okay.
So,
All right, any further discussion? All right. 7.05, early notification incentive.
so this is, we've done this now, last 4 years,
This will be the third year.
third year. So yeah, this is just an early notification incentive. It's always hard, I mean, anymore, it's so competitive to find people. The earlier we know, the better. So starting tomorrow, I mean, it'll be the first, what did you put on there? Is it 20? How many people can apply for it?
The first 15.
15. So first 15 people that let us know that they're leaving at the end of the year, will get a $1,500 incentive. So it's not a whole lot, but it's something. You know, if you know you're going to go anyway, like what makes it very tough is if you know you're going to go anyway, but then you're like, just in case, I'm going to hold off and then I'll let you know in April. It's really hard to find people in April. So we like, if you know now and you can tell us by the end of January, then we'll pay you. So that helps us out a ton. And how many did we have last year?
Last year we had 6. The year before we had 11, I believe. So,
Yeah.
And the year before that, I don't even know if I had any of them in January, and I had a multitude of them that came in, you know, April or May, that were retirees that I know were already planning to retire. So
They didn't
yes.
let you know.
So, and I've already talked to One person for sure was just waiting for this, and then she opened her letter.
So the first 15 up to January 31st.
Correct.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, 7.06, open enrollment request per Iowa code. Is it on? Iowa Code 21.51A, closed session is appropriate to review or discuss records which are required or authorized by state or federal law to be kept confidential or to be kept confidential as a condition for that government's body's possession or continued receipt of federal funds. With that, can we get a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mrs.
Oh,
Peterson?
you guys can stay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Sorensen?
Yes.
Mr. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Houston?
Yes.
Mrs. Sheffield?
Yes. This is the second portion, comments and suggestions, second time that anyone in the audience or anyone online can address the board. We're good? All right.
My mic isn't working today.
Oh.
All right, we'll then go to action items.
plugged
9.01 SBRC applications, open enrollment out, not on prior year's head count. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mrs. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Sorensen,
Yes.
Mr. Wright,
Yes.
Ms. Adkins,
Yes.
Mr. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle.
Yes. 9.02 SBRC applications, limited English proficient instruction beyond 5 years. Can I get a motion, please?
Madam President, make a motion to approve the recommendation as discussed.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Sorensen,
Yes.
Mr. Wright,
Yes.
Ms. Adkins,
Yes.
Mr. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson,
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle.
Yes. 9.03 200 Series Policy Review Updates and IASB Alignments on the second reading.
Madam President.
Mr.
I would
Wright.
like to make a motion that we approve the 200 series board policies excluding policy 203, which will be reviewed at a later time.
Second.
Any discussion? And would a survey be done by the next board meeting?
Yes, yep, I'll get one out later this week.
Okay, all right. Vote, please.
Mr. Wright,
Yes.
Ms. Adkins,
Yes.
Mr. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Sorensen,
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle.
Yes. 9.04 Early Notification Incentive.
And this one, you want to read the whole recommended action. Just make
Madam
sure all the
President.
details are in there.
Mrs. McDaniel?
Board motion to approve the issuance of an early notification of resignation incentive in the amount of $1,500 for the first 15 qualified applicants due by January 31st, 2025.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Ms. Adkins,
Yes.
Mr. Houston,
Yes.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Sorensen,
Yes.
Mr. Wright,
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle.
Yes. 9.05 Open Enrollment Request.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Adkins?
I would like to make a motion to deny the open enrollment request as presented in closed session.
Second.
Any discussion? Vote, please.
Mr. Houston,
Abstain.
Mrs. McDaniel,
Yes.
Mrs. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. Sorensen,
Abstain.
Mr. Wright,
Yes.
Ms. Adkins,
Yes.
Mrs. Shuffle.
Yes. Items of interest, future board meetings. Our next regular board meeting will be December 2nd, 2024 at 6:30. We have the IASB State Conference starting on Wednesday and Thursday of this week. Some of the board members are able to go. Is there anything
I have
else?
a point of order. Is there one meeting or two meetings next time? Do we
There'll
have
be
an
two.
organization? Okay,
Yep.
just wanted
Yep.
to be
Yeah,
clear.
we'll have the regular board meeting and then
Well, we'll have
Well-
organization
meeting
meeting
first. Well,
and then the board.
No, it's old business, basically old business, new
Old
business.
business.
Certify,
Yeah.
So-
yeah, certify the election results.
Right,
then-
so that's the regular board meeting, then
And
it'll
then
be
the
the
organizational.
organizational.
Correct, yep.
All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you for coming. Do you want to talk?